Today we cancel MSNBC host Chris Hayes. Now, I believe this is Chris Hayes' first appearance in Daily Cancellation since 2020, which means it's been 5 years, which means I've been doing this segment for 5 years. I'm not sure if I should be proud of that or depressed by it. Maybe some strange combination of the two. But in any case, Hayes is making his Daily Cancellation comeback thanks to his interview this past weekend on Bill Maher's show. The conversation turned to the subject of gender transitions for minors. I'm always interested to hear how prominent liberals defend their position on this issue, since their position is so profoundly indefensible. And I'm always then disappointed to discover that their way of defending it is to not defend it. Instead, they grasp for the most pathetic cop-outs they can grab hold of, and that was Chris's strategy.
But I also think at the same time, there is a message of what I would call like common sense, patriotic pluralism. Yeah. That is a majority message, which is like, if some father and mother have health care for their kid lined up who's trans, just stay the f*** out of their business. Let them make that decision. That's their decision to make. And you don't have to make that for your family. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your family.
But the argument is whether the child should make the decision.
But the child is never making the decision. The parents are always making the decision. Parents consent to medical care.
Well, here in California, you're allowed to hide it from the parents if the kid is.
Yes.
Thank you, one person who knows that.
But I mean,
somebody knows that is the case.
I think in the vast majority, and we've been hearing from parents right now whose kids' medical care has been interrupted. I think there's a way to talk about.
Well, of course, they would say it's not medical care. They would say
that is what they're saying.
Disfiguring a child.
I think they should mind their own business. I really do. I think they should mind their own business. And I think that's true about a lot of things. I think there is this sense in which there was this sort of backlash politics, some of which I understood, some of which people I know felt that way. I don't think what people wanted was for the women CIA agents at the CIA to be told that they can't get together once a month to like celebrate former women spies. I just don't, I think like fundamental parts of what we call in this country the traditions of pluralism, which is what this country is. And pluralism is another word for diversity. If we're not going to use that one, let's use pluralism. That fundamentally there's a majority that understands that like we all come from different places. Yeah. And part of what makes this country work is we acknowledge and we negotiate those differences. And that's a thing that I think Democrats can win back a majority message.
Well, actually, Chris, most Americans don't want female CIA agents getting together once a month to celebrate women spies. Why do you need to do that once a month? What, like once a month, really? What exactly does a monthly female spy celebration consist of? What's the point of it? And more importantly, why should taxpayers fund that activity? If female CIA agents want to gather on their own time in their own homes to shout girl power or whatever, then they have every right to do it. But that is, in fact, precisely the kind of pointless PC nonsense that Americans just voted against. And if you still don't understand that, it just means that your party is going to continue to make all the mistakes that put you in this position to begin with, which frankly is fine with me. But Americans even more so voted against the castration, sterilization, and mutilation of minors. And Chris has a chance to present the affirmative case for giving children the same drug they use to castrate sex offenders. He has the floor on a show with a large audience of people who, many of whom disagree with that kind of so-called medical treatment. If there's a good argument in favor of it, well, now would be an ideal time to present it. But there is no good argument in favor of it, or even a bad argument. There is no argument at all. Instead, Chris Hayes, the avowed far-left liberal, suddenly turns libertarian. He says if parents want to castrate their kids, it's none of our business. We should just butt out. In fact, he abandons all at once any pretense that the quote-unquote trans child is leading his own transition. He says it's all about the parents. The parents choose. Well, there are two major problems with that, Chris. First of all, the whole idea here, right, the alleged reason that we have child gender transitions in the first place is that supposedly the child has identified some deep inner truth that tells him that he is really a girl, or vice versa. The entire pro-trans argument rests necessarily on the idea that a person's transness is, while not visible to the outside world, somehow uniquely knowable to the trans person. When a male says that he's really a female, nobody can confirm or disconfirm the claim. It is an inner truth that only he can know. Now, this is, of course, nonsense. It is absolute incomprehensible hokum. But this is the pro-trans logic, as illogical as it is, which means that according to that logic, the child is the one who chooses to undergo the transition. Both the parent and the medical provider are deferring to the child's own testimony about his inner opposite sex identity. Again, according to the argument that Chris's side makes, only the child can actually know if he's trans, which means that the ultimate authority when it comes to his medical transition is not the parents or even the doctor, it is the child. They are giving the child the drugs to make him into the opposite sex, which of course is impossible, purely because the child said he is the opposite sex. That is the one single fundamental thing that the whole case rests on. But Chris knows that it's insane to give an 11-year-old that kind of power and control over his own medical care. He knows he can't defend the idea that children are capable of consenting to life-altering medical procedures. So he hides behind the let parents make the decision dodge. And the thing is, of course, that parents are the ones making the decision, right? All that stuff about a child recognizing his inner truth or whatever is total gibberish. My only point that this gibberish is what the whole pro-trans side of the argument rests on. So if Chris is admitting that it's actually the parents guiding the ship, then he's admitting that transgenderism is in fact something being imposed on the child from the outside, which automatically delegitimizes the whole enterprise. So there's really nothing else to say. If Chris Hayes is admitting, oh yeah, well, it's the parent really doing this, well, then what are we talking about? What are we even talking about at that? Of course, then it's wrong. Obviously. But so I mean, Chris Hayes has basically just abandoned his whole argument. So there's no reason to continue, but I'll continue anyway. Bill Maher points out correctly that the other side, Team Sanity, would say correctly that this medical care is not really medical care, but it is in fact disfiguring a child. And Chris's only response to that is, and I quote, "I think they should mind their own business." What he's saying quite explicitly is that even if the parents are disfiguring their child, we should simply butt out and let it happen. It's none of our business. Now, he says this now, but I guarantee he would be singing a very different tune if, let's say, some conservative parent in some sort of radical religious sect decided that they didn't want to give their child a life-saving blood transfusion because it's against God's wishes or whatever. Now, that would be a medical decision that the parents are making. By Chris's logic, we should butt out and let the kid die unnecessarily, all in the name of respecting the privacy of the parents. But I feel fairly certain that Chris would not stick to his mind your own business principles in that case. And that's because his mind your own business principles apply pretty much exclusively to this one issue. In fact, we could come up with a million examples of things that parents might do to their children that, even though it is a private decision made by the family in their own home, Chris Hayes would still object to and would want the government to step in and put a stop to it. Indeed, if you apply this mind your own business philosophy consistently, then that would mean we should abolish all laws against all forms of child abuse. Because no matter what a parent is doing to a child, no matter what sort of harm they're inflicting, mind your own business. It doesn't concern you, doesn't affect you. That's the argument Chris Hayes is making. Respect their privacy. Focus on your own issues. And yet I will give Chris Hayes the benefit of the doubt and assume that he is not that monstrously psychotic. He's only pretending to be for the sake of being a good little LGBT ally. I bet that in almost every case, Chris Hayes would agree that when a child is being directly and intentionally harmed, the last thing we should do is mind our own business. That is an approach that he only adopts for this issue, well, and abortion. So those are the two massive exceptions. If a child is being castrated in middle school or dismembered in the womb, mind your own business. But if he's being abused in any other way at any other point, send in the cavalry and throw those parents in prison. That's Chris's position, and it is, again, totally indefensible, which is why even while defending it, he doesn't really defend it. He knows better. They all do. And, that is what makes this so especially disgusting. And that is why he is today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.